Hey, first I want to thank everybody for coming out. And it's indicative of how important Army aviation is to our Army as you look around at the attendance we've got today. And I think I couldn't do a better job of echoing what the Vice had to say. So, our branch over the last year, since the last time we talked, has been very busy, and it is the tempo has been through the roof, and we've been getting after a lot of critical issues and initiatives. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today to let you know where we're at with respect to ARI, the changes that we made, and the progress that we're making as we look at building readiness, which is the Chief's #1 priority. So last year I showed you a vision statement that we've been using that's really driving the enterprise. And the good news is a year later, when you look back at it, and you don't have to change it, and I think we've got it right now. So, as we go through and execute the Aviation Restructure Initiative, the downsizing of the branch, getting it sized right and getting the modernization right. This has helped us really take a hard look across the branch at other areas that we've got to continue to be able to get after to maintain this asymmetric advantage that we are for our Army. And I think if you look, or as you look at Army aviation, it truly is an asymmetric advantage for our nation. The size and capability of our branch brings a very unique maneuver aspect, firepower and lethality that no other nation can use. And our multinational partners, I was just in Europe last week, spending time flying around in Romania and seeing Army aviation scattered all over Europe in company-size elements, and talking with other nations' forces, their aviators, many of them in their air forces, many of them saying, I wish we were in our Army, because that unique aspect of us operating in the land domain, even though we fly in the air domain, our operations are directly in the land domain. And seeing those other nations, they truly do look to Army aviation, to emulate us. And we spent a lot of time over there doing multinational operations, training them and enabling theirs. And we're starting to see a lot of progress across NATO on interoperability and a change in how their land forces view their aviation assets. So as we go through ARI, and we really are focused on maintaining this asymmetric capability for our nation, we have reorganized a significant amount of the branch, and it is on track. FY16 is going to be the biggest year, but we've already done 5 brigades that we've reconfigured. We've fielded a number of HARs. As a matter of fact, one of those HARs is in combat today in Iraq. So that'll tell you, in a year, we've transitioned, built the HARs, and deployed it. And that is happening across the branch. And going very effectively. In partnership with the PEO across the entire enterprise and with AMCOM, we've been able to drive this very hard. We are also making great progress on moving to the pure fleet. We've divested almost all of the OH-58Ds. We've got 2 squadrons left right now. And, as a 58D driver, that breaks my heart, but we've got to do it. It's the right thing to do. And we will finish divestiture here during 16. Minus the 117 Cav, which will roll up and be the last squadron that will operate in Korea. They'll do their last deployment. So we're on track with the divestiture. We've already started to divest the training aircraft down at Fort Rucker. Our first LUH class started this week. The nickel ride was on Monday. So we are flying LUH as a training aircraft today in the training base. It's split between that and our legacy aircraft, but that is on track. A year ago, we hadn't even started training instructor pilots, so a lot of progress in just a year. And as we look to the future we've got to divest our other legacy aircraft, like our UH-60 Alphas. We're behind on that, and that's an issue. As I testified to the Modernization Committee for the House Armed Services Committee, their big question was, when are you going to finish modernizing the Guard? When are we going to get the Alpha models out of the Guard? And that really is being driven, and that's a large part, a budgetary issue. And as we looked at ARI, that allowed us to move the Blackhawks out of the Guard, the Alpha models out of the Guard, and replace them with Limas and move to Victor models sooner. And that will enable us, but it's still going to be slower than I want, probably in 23 by the time we finish the full divestiture of the Alpha models. But again, a lot of great work that's been done across the enterprise with respect to transitioning all of our units and divesting aircraft and going to a fully modernized fleet. And as we look at disruptive technologies, again, many of these were ideas last year. We've got to improve on our degraded visual environment capability. or we've got to get better power through ITEP. A lot of these programs were at risk, or they were just good ideas, and I would tell you that they're all in very good shape right now. And even though they're going to come slower than we want because of budgetary concerns, all the programs are safe, they're on track, they're in our long-range plans, and they've got great support across the Army staff. Yesterday I was just in with Michoud, and we did the ASARC for the CH-47 Block 2. And again, fully approved, we're moving out on that. We're well on track for ITEP, so our new engine that we need, that's on track. We've seen a lot of great results out of DVE. I'll tell you, a year ago, I wouldn't have thought we'd be where we are today on DVE. So again, that's another area that, and then JAGM, replacing our missiles. So a number of those key programs that are disruptive technologies that we need out there to keep this asymmetric advantage, they're all on track. Aircraft survivability equipment, we're accelerating much of that. A lot of effort with the Vice and with an open forum. I really can't get into a lot of it, but we're doing a lot of work right now on aircraft survivability equipment, and it has a lot of support right now through the acquisition executive and the chief and the Vice. So again, that's all good news for our branch, but we're going to buy to budget, and that's always going to be the challenge. And our top line is not going up, and it will not go up. So we're going to have to make tough choices as we go along. Things are going to come into the force slower than we want, slower than I want, slower than we need, but we're preserving all of these programs to be able to continue to maintain this edge as we move to the future. We've also made a ton of progress across the center. We've redone all of our doctrines. So we've produced our capstone doctrine. Our subordinate manuals to that are now out. As a matter of fact, I just finished reading the 304.1, which is our TTP manual. So that one's out in draft form right now. We'll have it out fully released in the next 6 months. We're doing living doctrine. I just looked at this. So it's animated doctrine right now for our younger soldiers. It's actually pretty cool. That's going to be produced and released here in the next month. So a new way to get to our soldiers, our younger leaders, for them to be able to better understand our doctrinal principles. And we've done a lot of work in our commander's guide on how we train. We've changed a lot of things in the commander's guide, and we'll be putting that out during the senior leader forum, taking a different approach to training and really how we reinvigorate home station training. So a lot of work being done in that area. And then as far as home station training, this is an area that I have great concern right now. You know, our flying hour program is not what it needs to be. We've had this discussion a number of times up with the Army staff, and the Army right now is taking a holistic look at aviation flying hours. We're flying at lower rates than we need to be able to maintain the level of proficiency that we need to operate really across the globe. And we're expecting Army aviation today at an op tempo that really is higher than what we saw even during the surge. If you look at a mission tempo perspective, we're expecting Army aviation to be out there to be able to do that. And we need to be trained at a much higher level to maintain our proficiency, especially as we think about decisive action and combined arms operations. So much more complex mission, much more difficult than what we've been doing in the past. I mean, you couldn't fly in a more complex physical environment than Afghanistan, but I would tell you that the mission environment was relatively simple. You know, when you think about coin operations, that is a pretty simple problem to solve perspective-wise, or respectively, than combined arms operations when you're really thinking at large collective maneuvers. So we've got to continue to build that proficiency, and we've got to increase our flying hour programs across all three of our compos in our total aviation force, and we're taking a hard look at that right now. We've got a team that's pulled together. In fact, General Mangum's leading that team, and we'll take a hard look at that particular aspect at the Army level and how we can increase proficiency and flying hours for the force. And then last couple of points there that I want to hit, and then I'll move on to one other slide, and then I'll open it up for questions because I don't want to hog the time too much here. We are doing a lot of work down in the school, and you know, the Vice talked about training and leader development, and a lot of the efforts that we're making are in that area. I mean, we've redone our Warrant Officer Advanced course. We've changed the whole perspective. It was really focused on kind of a common core, kind of basic officership stuff, and we've changed it to a complete warfighting perspective. We've been out and worked with MOTS. We've taken a lot of things that the Marine Corps has used out in the MOTS training area, and we've brought that into the Warrant Officer Advanced course, because that's really the bulk of the trigger pullers in our branch. And so we're bringing them there and focusing them on warfighting for the 9 weeks we've got them there in WOAC, as opposed to kind of basic officership stuff. We started the CAV Leaders course, with a lot of great help from the Maneuver Center, and it's up and running, and we're running it once a month. So that's getting after bringing the HARs on station or into the units. So bringing that cavalry culture into the Apache community and really driving the man-unmanned teaming. And then last, we've been doing a lot of great work with the units out there of putting Doctrine training teams that are out as we field shadows. And I would tell you, bringing shadow into the aviation units has made a huge difference in their operations downrange. We could look at what they're doing today in Iraq with the shadows out of the HARs there, and it's pretty phenomenal. It's kind of night and day from what we were able to do before, and it really gets back to that aviation standardization and really getting after driving unmanned aero scouts. So good news story there as we continue to bring UAS into our formations. And then lastly, we've continued to work very closely with AMCOM and the PEO on how we get after maintaining and sustaining readiness, and done a lot of work there, and I'll show you a couple of things here in a minute that we're doing. And then so really it's ultimately about, as the Vice said, the weapon system is our soldiers and our leaders, and that's where our focus is, but enabling them with the best capabilities. So if you go to the next slide. So real quick, and I will keep this short, but I think many of you know this, but if you think about, what is Army Aviation today and what are we doing? We're 22 brigades, okay, across the total force. Over 50% of the branch is in Compo 2 and Compo 3, the Army Reserves and the National Guard. We're deployed, around the world. Operationally, we're sitting right now, and it varies by day. It ranges between 18 and 23 different countries that we're operating in today. And some of these are as small as company-level elements, company-size elements that may be 400 to 600 miles from their headquarters. We saw that, and I was just in Romania last week. I mean, we've got a company commander who's out there operating 600 miles, a 2.5-hour, 3-hour flight in a UC-35 from his battalion headquarters, and doing phenomenal things, working with multinational partners. So that's what Army Aviation is doing today across the globe. We're still deployed in Afghanistan with the bulk of a brigade. We're still deployed in Iraq with the bulk of a brigade. Both of those are multi-compo deployments. We've got an active CAB in Afghanistan, but it's got National Guard units attached to it right now. And we've got a National Guard CAB in Kuwait and Iraq with active units attached. And we're deploying multi-compo. We will continue to do that. So as you look at, every operation that the Army is in today has Army Aviation. And I would tell you the demand signal is through the roof. The demand signal is outpacing our capability to support all of us. We're having to make hard choices. FORSCOM's having to make hard choices. So one of the key initiatives we're really pushing for is to man the 11th CAB. We've got the equipment set, and that's competing right now in the Army TAA process, and I'm hopeful. We've got a lot of senior leadership. I know that's FORSCOM and TRADOC's number one priority is to man that 11th CAB. We've got the equipment, and if we do that, that's going to help us mitigate some of the op-tempo issues and get us back into a more sustainable level there. Next slide. Again, I'm not gonna labor this because I really do want to open up for some questions here. I'll hit a couple of points on as we think about the Chief's number one priority of readiness, and I talked about the 11th CAB up there. So as we look at the buckets of man, equip, train, and sustain, and I've already hit a few of these. But again, I think from a manning perspective, the key thing we've got to get after is really driving the manning of that 11th CAB, and then we're doing a lot of work with the building on how do we get our SMDR process, and that's really how many aviators we bring in and we train to get them out in the units, and trying to match that to the operational requirement. There's a lot of science to that, and it's taken a lot of work to get that straight. But again, from a resourcing perspective, make sure we're getting the right soldier into the right cockpit that needs to go out there for a requirement against the unit. That's been a pretty significant issue over the last 3 or 4 years that we've been able to address this year, and I think we've made a lot of progress there. As we look on the equip side, we just released the modernization strategy. I won't say released. I just gave all the red ink back to Tom von Eschenbach, and it will be released here at the Senior Leader Forum, and it will really kind of drive, our long. It'll capture all the things we've been talking about for our long-range vision out there in 2040. We've also got the leader development training strategy that are about done. Just cut on those here over the holidays. And so those will be released here at our Senior Leader Forum. Again, providing guiding principles on how we're going to train and maintain capability at home station and at the combat training centers and in the institution. And Jim Richardson's been aggressively working on a long-range sustainment strategy, something we've been missing in the branch. And as you all know, sustainment for us is absolutely critical, so we've got to get after that. All right, go to the next slide, and then I'll open up for questions. I'll tell you what, I'm going to save this for when I talk at the next one. Let's just go ahead and go to the last slide, and I'll open up for questions. I'll dismount on that because I think we've got a few minutes here, and I'm sure people want to ask some questions. So, but ultimately, again, I'm very proud of what's going on across the branch, across the enterprise. There's phenomenal work that's happening out there. There's phenomenal work happening in the Army. And as we face the challenges of the Aviation Restructure Initiative, which is every single unit across all three compos is impacted. I mean, we're touching including all the TDA. And that is no small undertaking. And the level of work that is taken from tracking down and finding the right torque wrench to get to a unit, as well as moving aircraft from Europe to Alaska and from all over CONUS to Hawaii and everywhere else, has been a phenomenal effort across the Army staff, down at the center and across the entire aviation enterprise. So I appreciate everybody's great support on that and the continued hard work. And FY16 is the year that we're really going to get the bulk of ARI completed. And I'm very confident and optimistic that it's going to continue to go as well as it is today. Frankly, we're ahead of schedule on much of it. So again, I'll go ahead and open up for any questions that you've got. Okay, so please speak to examples of the type of disruptive technologies you're working with JAGM on lethality. Okay, so when we're talking about, I'll just talk lethality broadly. You know, as we're looking at, I gotta be careful with it open. We're looking at very advanced threats that have capabilities. So we're looking for, you know, passive capabilities from a lethality perspective. So can we make passive shots? I'll leave that piece at that. We're also looking for scalable and tailorable munitions. And as a matter of fact, next week I will brief the Vice on our lethality strategy, which is going to talk about how do we improve the lethality of our most lethal capability against our most lethal threats, and then how do we have scalable, tailorable munitions in between those, you know, so we've got an affordable cost curve that we're not killing a $10 target with $150,000 munition, okay? So we're looking hard at that, and we're going to lay a plan out for the Vice that will show him how we're going to transition to some of these new munitions in time. And if he approves that, then we're going to start moving out on it. And we'll start seeing a lot of changes in the early 20s on our munitions portfolio. Yeah, that's a difficult question in an open forum because I could dance into some other things, but I think I'm gonna have to leave it at that we're just looking at the very advanced threats on how we can improve the lethality of the munition. And ultimately, as we think about, you know, the lethality of the munition, the more lethal it is, the smaller our future aircraft are gonna have to be because we're not gonna have to carry as many missiles to get the kills that we need. So our stowed kills, and that's another key component of our lethality strategy, is to drive the lethality up as high as we can to reduce our future requirements in our attack aircraft. You know, I mean, we built the Apache to carry 16 missiles. You know, we had a mass problem. You know, how can we fight outnumbered and win? We don't have to have that same metric today. And if we can get the lethality up, we can maybe drive to a smaller attack platform again, more affordable, more sustainable, more agile. So that's some of the things we're looking at on the lethality side. Comment on shortcomings of the tactical communications, cybersecurity, and Army aviation, and would you like to see from industry to solve your problems? Yeah, as we, you know, again, the air-ground the network continues to be a challenge for, you know, not just Army aviation. It's a challenge for the Army right now. As the Army is relooking the network strategy, you know, and they are, and there's been a review that's ongoing right now. You know, whether soldier radio waveform, you know, what's the timing of that coming in? Because the air-ground network can't be broken right now. That's one of the challenges I've got. You know, we're still sitting on SINGARs, We don't have SRW on the aircraft, and we've got a lot of units that are equipped with SRW out there on the ground, so soldier radio waveform, which presents us some challenges. So the soldiers are still carrying SINGARs with them. So there's some decisions that are going to be made at the Army level. So until those decisions are made, and I think it's probably going to be in the next 4 to 6 months, the chief's going to get a full laydown of the network, and he'll get to make some decisions. I really can't tell you what Army Aviation needs, because I need to know where the Army's going to go on it. I know eventually we're going to need SRW. I think we'll be there. Certainly Link 16 in the aircraft, which we're already on track to get into the Apache. But I think in the long term, as we look at, we want to have shared, better shared understanding even between aircraft as we go to the future when we're out there executing missions. And our SOAC's doing a lot of work right now, and we're paying pretty close attention to what they're doing for our future requirements. What are the key capabilities the Army is looking for in Class 4 UAS? Is VTOL relevant? Is there thought, well, whoever this is, you have bad handwriting, to multi-mission capabilities such as cargo resupply? Okay, so the bottom line is, as we're looking, the key requirements we're driving right now in our future unmanned systems is, one, I don't want to be on runways anymore. So it needs to be runway, not dependent. So it needs to have a VTOL capability. And we got to be able to push it forward, with units. It can't be sitting, in an airfield that's, 4 hours away from, where the command post is. It's just not, it's not what we need to be doing. So we got to get off airfields. It's got to be survivable. So we've got to reduce the signature, and we got to reduce how many people it takes to run it. Those are the three things that we're driving right now. And it needs to have similar payload capabilities, ranges, and speed's not as big a deal as, I'm not real concerned about the speed, because we can get it forward positioned. We can live with an aircraft that's not going to be, doesn't have to fly with future vertical lift speed-wise. So those are the key requirements that we're driving right now as we look to the future. And that's both for our large UAS and for our tactical UAS. We're looking at both of those. So hopefully, and then the other question was cargo resupply. CASCOM's driving a requirement right now that they want to try to go for a cargo resupply aircraft. And, again, it gets down to structure. So I've told them, I said, if you can find the truck companies that you want to give up to put, that structure out there, then that's what we're going to do. But a cargo UAS, although it has a lot of capability, we very seldom fly pure cargo missions with our, the demand's just not there. So are there missions where we could use it? Yes. But would I give up manned aircraft to do it? No, because I get a lot less flexibility, because I can't put a soldier in an unmanned, I can't have an unmanned cargo aircraft moving soldiers. So we reduce our flexibility. And when you got a limited amount of choices, we want to keep the things that have the most flexibility, and that's manned aircraft with respect to moving cargo and personnel. Now, CASCOM is taking a hard look at their force structure, and there may be some logistics force structure that moves into aviation, and that's what I've told them we've got to do. But we don't have enough manned structure right now to do all the missions, and we're certainly not going to change manned or exchange manned for unmanned structure, at least not as long as I'm the branch chief. And that may not be too much longer, so. We got a lot of unmanned stuff out there already. All right, can you discuss the challenges of coordinating a multi-compo unit when it comes to rotary wing units? What's working, what's not when it comes to multi-compo? Well, I would tell you right now, the way we're deploying multi-compo, is really at the brigade level, and then we've got subordinate battalions. When I deployed as a brigade, although we do have some separate companies out there, I would tell you the big challenge that we've got right now is just trying to get the alignments. As you look at Iraq, I think one of the big, the 40th CAB out of 40th Aviation Brigade out of California just went into Iraq or into Kuwait as the OSS brigade. And so they're not lined up with their active duty HARS. The HARS was already there. And there's a lot of transitions that have been going on. So we're trying to get those lined up to where they can train together before they go over. So a lot of it's happening during and we saw this in previous deployments. Not a new lesson, but it's it's a matter of how busy we are and how much demand there is on all the aviation that it's becoming more challenging for us to synchronize and get units lined up to where they deploy together, at least close enough together that they can train together. So that's an issue, that's a challenge. We are also seeing, and again, it's typical. It's not just multi-compo, but it's whenever you deploy units from different brigades. Even you obviously have the baseline SOPs and all those other things. Although a lot of that has been kind of addressed through the amount of rotations we've been doing over the last 10 years, but there are still challenges between mixing units from other organizations. But I think overall, we've done, across the branch, we've done a pretty phenomenal job of deploying multi-compo units. I mean, I can look back at all the brigades. When I went as a brigade commander, I had a cavalry squadron out of Tennessee that deployed with us. So and I'm trying to think back to recent rotations where we haven't been multi-compo, and there's very few. So I think we've experienced that a lot. When you think about multi-compo in peacetime or at home station, that's a whole different animal. And there's a whole host of challenges that I probably don't have time to get into here, and I think we could talk to you offline. I know if you talk with Ray Davis here, we can probably share a whole bunch of lessons that we've got there, things that are going to be pretty wicked challenges we think about if that's something that we want to try to do. How comfortable are you on support for FVL outside the Army and Congress and OSD? I would tell you that inside the Army, I think we have tremendous support, okay? The chief has mentioned it a number of times, and I haven't had a chance to sit down and brief him on FVL yet. He's been talking with General Perkins, but obviously the Vice is a huge supporter. I'm going to brief the JROC here, and it just got moved to the 1st of March. We're getting great support across OSD. But, that OSD is a big animal. The Army's a big animal. There's there are probably some people out there that may not be as enthusiastic about it as we are. But I think we've got great support in Cape, and we've been spending a lot of time with the Marine Corps. As a matter of fact, I just had the Deputy Commandant for Aviation for the Marines down at Fort Rucker right before Christmas. I mean, we spent the day talking about what we're going to do on FVL together, developing requirements, how we're going to approach the acquisition strategy. So I think from a joint perspective, we've got great support. And from everything I've seen from Congress, we've gotten a number of requests from Congress for information, so I haven't seen anybody that seems to be opposed to it. It is going to be and we'll see after Joint Multi-Role Tech Dem, flies. I think that's really going to build the enthusiasm, and the questions will start coming at that point in time when we start seeing the technology realized. But this is going to be the largest joint program that, we're going to undertake really in the OSD, minus the F-35. When you start thinking about the sheer volume of aircraft that we're talking about replacing, I mean, this is going to be a huge program. So, it's going to continue to get a lot of visibility, and I think right now the support's very good. I think sticker shock's starting to hit people, but it's just like anything else when you're looking at buying new aircraft or any other new system. But we have looked at our future investment strategies, and FVL is affordable. We're going to buy the budget, and we have the ability to take new aircraft through EMD, and I think we'll be all right as long as the budget doesn't get any worse. That's a big assumption. Cool. Let's see what other questions. So I got 2 on multi-compo, so I think I already answered that one. UAS. Okay, so I think that's, am I over my time now? Oh, it's still good. Damn it. I got off my slides too fast. All right. Challenges for home station training. Well, one, as I mentioned, I mean, ultimately the thing that drives our ability to, build proficiency and readiness across the branch is, are we going to be able to execute, adequate flight hours to build proficiency? So number one, we got to fix the flying hour program, from a home station training perspective. Number two, as we look at home station ranges, that's an area that we spend a lot of time focused on, trying to develop digital air-ground integration ranges. We've got a number of them that are out there at the installations, but we're not complete yet, so we're continuing to focus on building the right kind of range complexes to be able to enable not only our new gunnery strategy through the .45, but to be able to do air-ground ops as well, which is a critical component. The third piece I would tell you is really being able to provide the feedback that we need. And we're going to have a panel today that's going to talk training, so I don't want to drive too far down that road. But, so as we look at, when you go to a CTC, you've got all that AAR feedback. We've driven that now into home station through HITS. And we're doing a lot of work right now to integrate HITS and tests. And we basically need to bring Army Aviation into the integrated training environment. Well, the future STE that we'll have out there. So I think that's a key area. And I think we made a lot of progress on how we're getting after simulations. We're going to eventually sunset AVCAT, but we've got it now to where it's going to be in sustainment long enough and close enough to the next variant that I'm comfortable that we'll be okay there. And we're doing a lot. We finally have gotten after the concurrency issues, and we made a ton of progress there to get the simulation concurrent with the version of aircraft that's out there. And we'll finish most of that concurrency work here over the next 12 to 14 months. So that's good news because, 2 years ago, we were about 3 versions behind on software and everything on every aircraft. So it was very difficult to use AVCAT, and we've gotten it much better now. So a lot of great help from Mark O'Neill's team there in CACT and PEO Stri. So, but I really do think ultimately the real challenge we're going to have at home station training is the fact that our mission tempo is so high across the branch that we are consuming readiness faster than we can generate it. And when you look at, especially when we think decisive action, if we're going to talk about company, troop, battalion, squadron level operations, how much are we getting to do that before we're deploying these small units all over? Right now we got an attack battalion in Europe and it's operating at the team level, sometimes in 5 different countries at the same time. So that's consuming readiness. Although they're doing phenomenal things, we're not building decisive action readiness, collective level proficiency to get up to the training levels the chief expects us to be at and where we need to be at to be able to go out there and fight in this very complex environment. So that's the challenge, balancing between, building readiness and consuming it. And right now we're consuming it about as fast as we can build it. And we're really probably not getting up to the level, or we are not getting up to the level that I want us to get up to from a T1 perspective. So we're doing a lot of work right now on what we call Objective T. So it's placing objective measures out there for commanders to assess their readiness. Instead of it being a subjective commander's call, it really is geared towards decisive action. So I think that's going to help commanders better see themselves. It's going to help the Army better understand. And this is across, broadly across the entire Army, not just for aviation. So I think that's going to help us drive home station training. And I think as we've come off of 14 or 15 years of conducting coin operations, that's a lot of muscle memory that we can't forget it, but there's a lot of other things that we have not been doing. Okay, see a lot of blinking over here to the right that we have not been doing that that we've got to get after now. So, that change is tough. When you start thinking about, we went into Afghanistan. Many of the brigade and battalion commanders were just platoon leaders then. So, it's we got some work to do. So I think those are kind of the main challenges that I see right now. What are the lessons for Army Aviation coming out of the Ukraine experience? This appears to be a non-permissive environment for Ukrainian rotary wing. Any comments? We're obviously taking a very hard look, at not only just what's going on in Ukraine and Crimea, but certainly, through the whole Levant, through Syria and Libya. And there are a number of challenges. There's been a significant proliferation of man pads and other threats that are out there. And we're paying very close attention to that, and we're doing a lot of work on our aircraft survivability equipment. So there are some great lessons learned. We've sent a number of teams into the Ukraine to talk with them to gather lessons learned. We've had aviators on that. We've got another group of aviators going over there coming up here in a couple of weeks. So we're collecting those lessons, and I think there's some great lessons for us to learn from that. And it's not just, understanding our own capabilities, but it's TTPs being employed by, potential adversaries. And what are your thoughts on future aviation capability face? Okay, so our open architecture as the branch addresses future training enhancements with respect to home station training. Okay, I'm not sure I understand. I guess maybe, so if we're looking for face compliance, if that was the, who asked the question? Unless you don't want to say who it was. All right, well, I'll take a stab at it, and then if I get it wrong, speak up and tell me, hey, you're on the wrong track here. So, as we look at face, I mean, we're building an open architecture on our future aircraft that's going to allow us to plug and play. I mean, that's one of the things that we want to do, and we certainly are going to do that in our training system. So, and that's one of the key linkages we've got to maintain with Mark O'Neill and his team as they develop, the virtual requirements for our collective trainers, which is different than our individual trainers, which are developed by our PMs. But keeping all of those things with face compliance is going to be absolutely essential. So, because as I see the future, one of the things that we really need to be able to do is, as we, and face will allow us to do this, and it's one of the challenges we have today is, as we go in and we have simulations, we end up having to go recreate all the software in the simulators. And that gets very expensive. It takes a lot of time. It's not very agile. And we want to develop with face, we'll be able to use open architectures and be able to run native software that comes right out of the aircraft. So when we put a new software drop, and we do that frequently, into an aircraft or into an unmanned system, it's very easy for us to bring it into our simulations and emulate it in home station training, because the concurrency piece right now of recreating the software and having to emulate that software in simulation is very expensive. It takes a lot of time. And sometimes you don't have the money to do it, and we're getting behind on concurrency. So I think hopefully that addresses, I was somewhere in the mark on what the question was. And if I'm off track, just ask me after this, and I'll be glad to cover it. All right, any more? Okay. The clock is counting down here. It's 2:53. You said Chinook Block 2 was approved. Can you comment on that? How you got it across? Well, okay, so Chinook Block 2, I didn't say it was approved. I mean, there has been a material, it is on track. It's through the ASARC, and there's a number of bureaucratic processes that you go through. It has been approved. So as a plan, and we're on progress to make that a program of record. So I guess that's the best way to characterize that. But it is, we got with Ms. Shue yesterday, and the AOA has been completed, and we've made a choice on the direction we're going, and we're moving out on it. So, and that's going to help both the conventional Army and our SOAC. We got to fix their aging G models. They're going to get some new frames out of this. So it's good news across the branch, not only conventional but soft. Okay. Any other questions? All right, well, thanks very much. I appreciate everybody's attendance today. I think we got some great panels that we're going to be able to get through, and keep the questions coming. Thanks.